Hello everyone, welcome to Winged Horse Designs. I'm Donna Goodwin. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator located in Brookings, South Dakota. And today I have this fun magic slider card. So when you slide out the slider piece, it suddenly reveals all the color. I think you're really going to enjoy this, and it's really a lot simpler than it looks. Last week we did this triple easel card. And during the live, this went out to Irene. And for those of you who liked, commented, and shared during the live and during the replays, this is going out to Annette. And so it's on its way to Annette. Congratulations, ladies. I need to get up here where I can see this real quick. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and switch cameras, and we're going to go ahead and get started on this. Okay, so here is a better view of the card. It does have a window sheet, so there's a little glare there. I apologize. But you just create something to slide. So you're going to color one, and then the magic appears when you slide it out, and it colors. And it's really fun for children's cards or any other type of an interactive card with like animal creatures and things like that. I have one with some cute little owls I'll show you a little bit later. And then you can either put it on a regular card, or today what I did is I just put a piece on the back. And I haven't decided who I'm going to send it to, so it just says, let's get together. I haven't decided what to put on the back yet. So I'm going to set this up in the corner and show you the products that I chose to use. So I chose to use Coffee with Friends because I love the sentiments on here, and who doesn't like to spend a little bit of time with their friends? And we're going to use the park bench this time. And I chose the sentiment Coffee with a Friend is like happiness in a cup. And then, of course, on the back side, I put let's get together soon. But you've got, sometimes you just have to reheat your coffee one more time and try again. Thinking of you and coffee too, you've got this. And then you've got this nice little image here with coffee and some croissants. So it's just a nice, wonderful little set for friends. You won't need to write the measurements down because they are in the description. But for this one, since we're not putting it on an actual card, we're just putting a back on it, you need two card bases that measure 4¼ inches by 5½. I'm using Granny Apple Green, and I've already taken one and cut a frame out, so you can use this with something else. This is the Stitched Rectangle dies, which is retired. I just felt it would be easier to cut that out versus sitting there and cutting it with a paper trimmer. So those are both 4¼ by 5½ inches. Then you're going to need two pieces, one for our inside image and one for the back, that measure 4 inches by 5¼ inches. I'm using basic white. You'll need a piece for your slider, and you could actually put something on the back of that too if you wanted, or write more on there. And this piece measures 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, or I'm going to show you how to just not worry about measurements and size it to fit so that it'll slide in and out later. So I'm just going to leave that on so I don't stamp on that. So I'm going to bring this in here. 3 ink colors I'm using today. We need I forgot, you also need a window sheet. You can use acetate that you get off of children's toys, or you can purchase actual window sheet. This is the Stampin' Up! Window sheet, but quite frequently, if you have children or grandchildren, you have that plastic that makes it impossible to get them open. Works wonderful for this technique, so use a piece of that. This one measures 4 inches by 5¼ inches, the same as my white pieces. You will need Stays-On ink for the window sheets because other inks will not actually dry, and this does dry. And if you're using Stays-On, you're going to want to use rubber stamps. Stays-On interacts with the photopolymer stamps because of the chemical process to make photopolymer stamps, and the photopolymer stamps will actually start turning soft. Not as much as from the Stays-On ink itself as from the Stays-On cleaner that you need to clean Stays-On ink. There is a way to do it with photopolymer, but I definitely don't recommend it. Because I used blends on this, I'm using Memento. It's a great ink for working with alcohol-based markers. And then, I don't know if you can see it here. Yeah, you can see it there. I used Versamark just to give the frame a little bit more texture, I guess you could say. And I used a whole bunch of different blends. So we'll talk about those when we get a little bit further. So I'm going to start with this piece. And I'm going to bring in some scrap paper to protect my desk. And the Versamark. And I'm going to take this watercolor or watermark ink, and I'm just going to stamp randomly around the edge with this coffee and croissant image. I'm just going to rotate it a couple times because it's such a narrow band, you're not really going to be able to tell what it is that's being stamped. If you're just joining us, we are doing a magic slider card today. And if you're watching on replay, welcome. I love all the likes, comments, and shares, especially the comments. And if you think of any questions or I do something, you're like, wait a minute, what did she do? Please feel free to ask the question in the comments and I'll get to those questions at the end. So that's all we're going to need the Versamark for. So I'll put that out of my way and I'll set this aside. Now we want these two images, the image on our white that's going to go on our card base and the image on the window sheet need to be lined up exactly. A little lint on this one. So you definitely want to use a stamp positioning tool of some sort. I have the old Stampin' Up! Stamparatus, but a Misty works really well. I've already lined this up. I want this snug into the corner. I'm going to use this magnet to hold it into place. For this piece, I want to use Memento. Because this is the ink that's best for my alcohol markers. And I just have a block that a friend sent me that has felt glued on one side and pretty paper on the other. This is just easier than trying to push with my fingers. Sometimes my hands get a little sore from arthritis, so this just makes it easier. And it also gives it a nice good rub. And so you can see I didn't get it very well up here. A lot of people use those air hockey pucks. That works really well too. And there's actually a tool you can buy to do this as well. But an old wood block with a little bit of felt glued to it works really good. So I just re-inked it, and because I'm using a stamp positioning tool, it's going to come in the exact same spot. So if you're doing multiples, like at Valentine's Day and Christmas, a stamp positioning tool of some sort, a Misty or any other tool is really nice. So there we go. I have that image. I'm going to bring in my window sheet, put it in the exact same place, clean the Memento ink off. Hello, Betty. Welcome. And then for this, I need that stays on ink. Something that will dry on a non-porous surface. And again, I didn't get her head up there very well, so I'm just going to, because I can add ink and get it in the exact same spot, I'm going to do that. If any of you have worked with StazOn ink before, do you like the smell of it or do you dislike the smell of it? It almost smells like licorice, I think. Okay, I really need to get a little pressure up here on the top of her head. There we go. Now we have all that in there. So I can take this out, and I'll go ahead and use my StazOn cleaner and clean this up later. Actually, I wanted to keep this in because I have this sentiment all lined up. But I'm coming over this way. I'm going to flip it around. I lined this one up for this edge. I have this all lined up to already be straight. Now let's come over one more. That looks good. And we'll ink this one up with StazOn, because you notice when I put mine together, when you hide the image, I did put the sentiment on the outside. That way it would be on the outside as well as the inside. If you wanted to, you could put the sentiment on the inside and just have the outside, the image, the black and white image. I am going to tell you this does work better with line art, and I'll show you why in a moment. It's a little bit light right there. So sometimes up here by the hinges, it's hard to get a really good pressure. I usually typically work down in this section here because it's a lot easier to get pressure when you're down here than it is up close to the hinges. And every stamp positioner is different, so you just have to play around with your stamp position and see what works best. Now that's all of the ink pads. So I was originally going to do something that would then reveal this. However, you need to work with something black or maybe even the saddle brown. And then when I pulled my slider out, the brown was on top of this and I couldn't see the different colors of this. So it didn't quite work the way I had envisioned in my head. And I had to remember that we need line art for this. So I'm going to set that aside, let that dry while we work on this piece. Okay. So I was working with alcohol markers. You want something underneath because alcohol markers will bleed through. And let's just do, that's crumb cake. I have a whole tray full of markers. And every brand's a little bit different. I'm going to use Ivory on our one girl. We're going to pretend this is me when I was young and thin and pretty. Okay, mainly when I was young and thin. Because I wore my hair in a ponytail a lot back then. Actually, I wear my hair in a ponytail a lot now, too. And she's got these little capri pants on. And my friend over here has an incredibly wonderful tan, so we're going to use bronze. Now I'm not using any DSP, excuse me. Sorry, don't mean to use those abbreviations. I apologize. I'm not using any designer series paper on this card, but the month of June is designer series paper sale. And so you have 1 week, just this week. It's the last week of that. I have one I did ahead of time. So you'll want to get in on that. You can get a lot of the designer series papers for up to 15% off. And then when we get later, we're going to work on getting this lined up. We're going to line them up exactly. So we're going to start by putting this piece on our card base. And you can see how alcohol markers bleed through. If you're local to me here in the Brookings area, I do teach classes. I teach a real simple, easy class every Wednesday from 11 to noon. You can come and we do one card and have a lot of fun chit-chatting with each other. And then let's go ahead and stamp our back sentiment and put that on the back as well. We'll do Let's Get Together Soon. I personally am not a coffee drinker, but I still like my hot beverages in the winter. And those fruity smoothie drinks with tons and tons of calories in the summer. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this one on the back. Anyway, I was about to say, if you're local to me and you'd like to come to some class, and I also offer once a month classes where we make 3 cards. You can find that information in the link below for calendar. You can go over and shop for designer series paper. If you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you're located in the United States, you can go find that in my shop now, or host code one. So we've got this part done. We're going to need something to be able to grab a hold of. So I'm going to bring in just a little half circle punch I have, an old retired one. And I'm not going to try and punch all the way through because it will break this punch. I'm just going to go enough to give myself a mark on all the pieces. So I don't know if you can see it here, but there's a little bit of a mark here. Now I can come back and I know where that was. Now let's go a little bit deeper than that. And this one also has a mark on it. I'm going to have to push kind of hard because there's 3 layers of cardstock here. There we go. And then we put all this together, we'll be able to have a place to be able to get a hold of our slider piece and pull it out. So I'm going to take and put some real strong tear and tape along the edge here. And I'm going to get it as close as I can to the inside edge. Now this is tear and tape. I could tear it rather than cut it. I'm so used to cutting from back in the days when we had the red, we called it red tape because it had a little piece of red plastic backing on it. And you couldn't tear that. You had to cut that. And we want this because it'll stick good to our window sheet, unlike glue is too slippery and will slide around. I'm going to take a little piece of double-sided removable tape and I'm going to put it on the back side of my window sheet, and I'm going to line my window sheet up directly on top of the other image to hold it in place. And then I'm going to peel these backs off a little bit at a time. And if you're just joining us, welcome. We're doing a magic slider card today. And if you're watching on replay, welcome as well. Please do leave your comments. I'll check those out periodically throughout the day or in the next couple days. So I'm going to line this frame up the best I can on top of my card. And now I'm going to take those strips off so that I can adhere this to my window sheet. Now we can take these two pieces apart and take our removable tape off. And now we're going to come in and we're going to use foam tape on this one, which was right here a second ago. There it is. And I'm only going to put foam tape on the 3 sides. As close to the outside edge as I possibly can. And we'll just close up this tiny little gap right here. Not confetti or anything in, so it wasn't really necessary to make sure there were no holes. It's just, I like that there. So what you can do with this next one is just lay a piece of cardstock in, and you just need it to be smaller so that it'll fit in here. This one's just a little bit loose, but you want it to also be big enough that when it's slid in, everything is covered here. So before I put this down, I'm just going to put a little tab on here. And this is, I don't know, a piece of scrap I have left over that's about 1/4 of an inch. So we're just going to cut off about 1 inch and fold it in half. You could use ribbon if you wanted to, or twine. I'm just using a piece of cardstock. And then I'm going to lay this in here. And I want it to go all the way down here flush, as though it were in all the way. And I'm just going to put a little dab of glue right here. Oh, that was a bit much. And I'm going to line this up with the edge of the card. That way I know it will fit in the envelope. and hold that down. And I'm going to let that dry and we'll work on the rest of this. So now when we peel these off, and again, we could peel them off a little at a time, like I did with the other tape. Whatever works best for you to line this up. So I want to line this up, and I'm going to try to do this without getting my head in the picture. I'm going to line this window image directly above the other one and press it down. Now when you have this happen, you can either come in and trim or bring in your marker that's the same color as your cardstock and just simply color it. And you can color the edge. Whoops. Because sometimes, despite our best efforts by using the stamp positioner, we still end up with this little bit of white. But we could put it in a trimmer, and you can put it in a trimmer and trim it down, or you can do this little trick of coloring it. More than likely, after the live, I will put it in my trimmer and trim it down. So this has a little bit more glue on it than I wanted, but we can slide this in. And so when your recipient gets the card, it's black and white. And then when they pull the little tab, it reveals the color. So I hope you enjoyed this. I have another one I did back in February, and I'll have a link to it at the end. It'll take about 24 hours, but there'll be a link up in the corner that will take you to this one where you can watch what I did back in February. This one I used the adorable owls. I put a little bit more detail on here. I have a mat here, and I have some designer series paper, and then I have a different frame, but it's the same concept. You slide it out and you get to see the colors pop out. And then this one was actually put on a regular card that you would open up. So I don't have any questions. So I'm going to go straight to the live pick tool and let that go. So give me a moment here. And there's only one person out there, but we're going to let it do its magic anyway. And it doesn't want to draw because I believe that there's, at the exact moment right now, there's nobody here. Maybe they lost their connection, or maybe I'm out here talking to myself thinking I'm live when I'm not. Anyway, the only person who was here during the live is Betty. So this magic slider card for the live will go to Betty. And for those of you who are coming back and watching on replay, I'll let the computer throughout the course of this next week on not next Monday. You'll have 2 weeks this time. I'm not going to be here next Monday. The family actually has a weekend where they're not gone and out of town and here. So I'm going to spend the entire Independence weekend with my family. I will upload a video on Friday, and then I will be back with an uploaded video the following Friday, and I'll be back live 2 p.m. on Monday the 10th, I believe it is. So have a wonderful week, everyone. Happy trails, and I will see you in 2 weeks.